Hello and welcome to Boom 11 Live. And today we're going to be talking about football. And that's the reason why I'll be doing the anchoring job and April will be the one answering questions. Before we begin, though, let's not forget about the Boom 11 app, the fantasy app. Without any risk whatsoever, you can play fantasy cricket or football or even basketball for that matter on our app without having to pay any sort of money or any entry fee. You have virtual coins which you can earn for rewards as well. Some exciting prizes available right there. So please do check it out on Apple App Store and Google Play Store. So Abel, let's talk about the Premier League, right? Let's begin with the main story that's coming out of the Premier League, which is the gap between Manchester City and Arsenal have really narrowed down, you would say, because now it's not a lot of points as it was before. And the reason for that is obviously the win that Manchester City had in Stamford Bridge in comparison to what Arsenal drawing with Newcastle. So let's begin with the Manchester City and Arsenal Chelsea game, where it felt like Manchester City were challenged a lot more than from the Chelsea defense. I mean, Chelsea especially in the first half, where it seemed like Chelsea were neck to neck with Manchester City, but then it was the bench strength that ultimately got them through. Right? It was Riyad Mahrez's goal that in the 63rd minute that pushed them through, and questions also on Cucurella's defense and his defensive ability. So, how do you overall look at the match?
I mean, firstly, glad to be back again, and of course, European football has really kicked off quite intensely after the last live what we did. If you look at all the top flight leagues across Europe, you can see signs of who are going to win the league, who are going to be the top four at this stage. I know it's still early days with almost what half the season to be yet played, but the fact is that you are seeing early signs of the teams who are much more comfortable in the top four, and one of the classic examples where that match, especially Arsenal taking on Newcastle, before getting onto the City versus Chelsea game, I thought Arsenal taking on Newcastle was a very good game. It was evenly matched teams coming up against each other. It's not often what we got to see about. If it's not often we get to say that the Newcastle are evenly matched with a Premier League top four side, and they have been
Yeah.
outstanding this season. Eddie Howe, once again I have to appreciate him. The way in which he has managed the resources, the way in which he's really pulled up a team together this season is outstanding. I know they're going to make a lot more signings in the winter transfer window. They look pretty much active on it. As understand is that uh, they want to buy a couple more center midfielders. And, as you know that Bruno Gomes is one of the mainstays who are one of the main starters for 11, but they need backups as well because you understand if you have to compete and if you have to go far deep into the season, also if you want to challenge for European positions, you need a squad. You need a very strong squad as well, because the matches will come in pretty quickly now towards the latter half of the season. So there, whereby you would need a squad who can compete in the Premier League, and of course, the focus of Newcastle United at this time is definitely going to be to compete in the Premier League and see where things go from there on. And I think they've done a very good job. But coming back to City versus Chelsea, I thought it was a much better game than what's happening right now at this
Yeah.
point. Demolition from City in the FA Cup, but on the midweek it was a very close game because you saw Chelsea did have their chances in the first half. It did hit the woodwork a couple of times. Uh, so I would say Chelsea did show a lot more intent, especially in that last game against City in the Premier League, where things could have been a one-all draw as well, if not for the Mahrez. It was a good team goal ultimately. I would say so. There was a keeping mistake, but the fact is that it was a good team goal. I thought there was six. They strung close to seven consecutive passes, and the seventh one was kicked into the box. It was Riyad Mahrez, and Riyad Mahrez have been stepping up, especially whenever Pep has brought him on. And I thought Pep's substitutions in that game was spot on. If you look at that game, the players he brought in did make an impact straight away. That's where you could keep talking about City, right? City's substitution and the bench strength is a huge difference when you compare them with any other team in the Premier League. Let it be even the league toppers, Arsenal, right? Why do we say City can still overcome that gap and go on top of Arsenal? The very fact is that City can take this tournament. If City takes this league very deep, and if it goes down to maybe what 1.2 points difference, City has got that depth in them. Even if they lose a couple of their starting 11 players, They have players to come off the bench and really make a difference. Now, for example, Riyad Mahrez, he's not a main starter in this season, especially the way in which he came and made a difference. And for example, this game which they're playing in FA Cup right now, there's Haaland sitting on the bench, Gundogan sitting on the bench, De Bruyne sitting on the bench. But the fact is that players like Julian Alvarez, who just came in and made an impact, players like Riyad Mahrez, what a free kick did he score today? Foden had a brilliant goal as well today. So the fact is that the kind of impact these players can make off the bench for Manchester City is a huge difference. And once this comes down to 3 to 4 points, I think City vs Arsenal is going to be the the league decider kind of a match. It's going to be that
Yeah.
important. Like we talk about City Liverpool in the last 3 4 seasons, how it was going to be league deciding games. I don't know what the scoreline is going to be, but definitely the winner of that game is certainly going to have their noses ahead. I know if it is City, they still have to climb over Arsenal not once but twice in order to get that advantage over the Arsenal team. But for Arsenal, it's not going to be easy at all, because they're going to be challenged now going away, playing some of the top six teams. They are going to be challenged in all fronts. And now remember, they are going to be facing a lot more injuries as well. And if they lose a couple of their main players, especially someone like Odegaard, if imagine he gets injured, then Arsenal all of a sudden looks like a team which is extremely depleted.
Yeah, but I mean, if you talk about Manchester City, right? I mean, look at their bench, as you already mentioned. This Calvin Phillips, Jack Grealish, Julian Alvarez, one of the breakout stars, really, you would say, of that World Cup, is sitting on the bench for this team. And let's also, if you look at Riyad Mahrez, as you mentioned, but in the same time, at the same time, if you look at the Chelsea bench, I mean, they are really struggling, right? I mean, it's not been a very good season for them. They have had injuries of, I mean, epic proportions, if that's the best way to put it. You cannot, and I think in that particular game itself, they lost the likes of Christian Pulisic and Raheem Sterling in that first half itself. I think there's too many injuries right now, most of them being your starters. I think if you can just pull up their injuries list. So the players that have got injured is N'Golo Kante, Reece James, Wesley Fofana, Ben Chilwell, Armando Broja. This is just these are like basically the list of what is it, Chelsea starters that I'm reading out right now, and players who would either sit on the bench and who are expected to make an impact on the bench or really be the core of this Chelsea team is sitting injured. Potter did start well, but now he's struggling a lot, and we know how quick Chelsea is to change the manager. But can you really blame Graham Potter in this scenario, because he's come into a sinking ship, really?
He certainly has come into a singing ship, and you can't keep on changing managers. It's not the way how it works. If that was the way how it should have worked, I thought my personal opinion, Arteta should have been sacked way after his first season in itself. But
Yeah.
see, there should be a continuity which you should give with the manager, because you will see these kind of faces happening. Especially it's Graham Potter's first season. You had a World Cup which just happened. Many of your players did take part in the World Cup, which was a highly intensified tournament in itself. So players did come back. Players are going to take a while to get rid of the World Cup toll or the tax which they had on themselves, and to get back into a completely full flowing season. And remember, prior to the World Cup, it was extremely taxing as well, because of the thick and fast way in which the games came. All of a sudden, Graham Potter was appointed after Tuchel's poor start of the season. So these things are not easy for any manager to come in and make a change all of a sudden. It's not rocket science, or it's not something which happens overnight, where you come in and make a team into a great team. It doesn't even happen in FIFA for sure. So it's very
Uh-huh.
hard to make it happen in real life. And remember the kind of players he's gotten, right? He's not gotten the right amount of players. For example, they signed Wesley Fofana, great signing, but he's gotten injured after his first game. Reece James, a very very important player in this team, got injured and came back, played him for 60 minutes, got injured again. So it's very very tough to now deal with this team. And remember, they have a good bench, but the bench is not maybe as good to compete and to get into the top four. Now they are now 10th in the table, which is not something which you expect out of Chelsea. But there also at the same time there are players who are not performing as well. Let's be very honest. You need to ultimately blame it on the players. There are players like Mason Mount who have really had a very poor season for his liking. Kai Havertz has not shown any sign of improvement whatsoever. That's one of the primary reasons why you are talking about Chelsea football team as a sinking ship at this point. Aubameyang, I personally thought was a good signing, and I still think he's a good signing. But the fact of the matter is, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is not the old Aubameyang of the past, where he could come in and make a difference. What he used to do in Arsenal or whatever he did in Barca for a short period of while as well. It's a different team. The system is different. Similarly for Sterling, Sterling has been hot and cold for me, in my opinion. He has not had the best of seasons. At the same time, he's not had a very poor season as well. So, cumulatively speaking, that midfield really lacks a lot of creativity at this point of stage. They need fresh legs, fresh way in which they have to approach in the midfield. Because remember, this is the same midfield who has been playing for them, who have been playing for them for the last 4 to 5 years. Now, Jorginho really needs to move on. He has not really impacted in any game since the European triumph he had with Chelsea. Similarly, Kovacic is it's the only silver lining they have in the entire team. He's been putting in a shift every game and every opportunity he gets. But other than that, I personally think they really have to look. And for me, even now, I personally feel sort of like a Thiago Silva is irreplaceable in this team. He's such a important factor in this team for Chelsea. And I think Badioshile's signing is fantastic. Wonderful ball playing defender. I don't know how far he's going to really excel in Premier League. Time will only tell us that, but whatever I can understand of his player profile, whatever I watched out of him, fantastic ball playing defender. I really see a huge potential in Badiashile. He's similarly of Konate, who's much better with the ball. Konate is a very good player with the ball, but he's much better than Konate with the ball. You're mute. You're on mute.
Now that we are talking about Manchester City versus Chelsea in the FA Cup, fourth goal has just been scored. Another penalty. It was Riyad Mahrez who's completed a brace now for himself. Right after, I think it was Koulibaly who's brought him down in the box. And Riyad Mahrez has scored the second goal. But if you look at the defense table that they have come up with today, I mean, it is not a defense that Manchester City would be intimidated by. It's Koulibaly is probably and Trevor Chalobah are the two players who are probably recognized. Then there is number 42 Bashir Humphreys and I think who's the other guy? It's Hall. So these are the two players. It is who are I think replacing it. It's Lewis Hall, and it's just a second match of the season. It's not a very
Well,
intimidating
to be very
defense. It's
fair,
no wonder that they're
at this
owned it
point,
up.
you can only try your academy players as well. You have to look in the
Yeah.
future. And there is a clear indication that Chelsea are looking at a complete transition. Let's not blame completely on Chelsea. They are looking at a youthful transition. You saw in the game in the FA Cup, in the Premier League as well. You saw Chukwemeka come in. You saw a lot more academy players come in and actually to make a difference. And that's a very important factor when you ultimately look at it. For example, Louis Hall, an academic graduate once again. Trevor Chalobah, another academic graduate once again. So if you're looking at a system where you want to really include a lot more academic graduates, look at a very youthful kind of a squad, I think it's a move in the right direction. And I think you should give that bit of a leeway or a space for Graham Potter to actually experiment this season. Maybe in doing so, they might miss out on a top four, and that is going to be really catastrophic for this club at this point, because you don't want to miss out on the top four while experimenting a lot as well, especially when it comes to a certain bit of idea which you have, because Premier League is extremely competitive. The moment you are off the race, things can go out of your hands pretty quickly, and that's something which you do not want as a team, and that's something which has been happening with Chelsea. They're in 10th position with 26 points. That's all what they have, 25 points, and I personally think that's going to be very hard because they're 8 points behind Spurs at this point. Spurs are doing a very decent job. You can't blame it on Spurs. I know they lost the game, but the fact is that the Spurs are a tough team to beat this season as well, because the way in which they've been able to make those comebacks time and time again from being down on goals, that's a very good mentality to have as a team. So you know that a team like that can always rise up even if they're not doing bad, even if they're doing bad for a short period of time. Similarly, Manchester United having a very good time at this point of time.
Yeah.
I think they are a team to really look forward to as well. So it's not going to be easy. Brighton are having a very good season on the other side. It's a very competitive or top 10 in my opinion. If you look at Brentford, they're also competing for the European position. I personally think they can make it to a Conference League or even a Europa League position as well if they have a very good finish to the latter half of the season, which is possible. I know Ivan Toney is going to be a huge miss if he's found guilty of a case which he's involved in when it comes to his betting. But the fact is that Brentford can do it. Brentford are a very good team. They've already shown it. They've already taken down the big boys in a couple of the occasions. They drew Spurs. They defeated City. They defeated Liverpool. I think they are a very strong team to contend with. I personally think this Premier League table this season, especially, it's not going to be easy the moment you're going to be behind the 8 ball game.
Yeah, I think for me, I came across this very scary stat that Chelsea have not beaten any one of the big six in this season so far. Also, on the other hand, Brentford, I mean, what a story that has been. They have played great football, and they're just looking really good. But but let's before we move on, maybe to the La Liga, let's talk about. But let us talk about Liverpool, as John Walker has just put in the comments. I think that's one team we need to speak about. Another team with a lot of injury issues, and the fact that the likes of, you haven't probably seen someone like Darwin Nunes coming up to the exact position that probably people would have hoped he would have. They pipped him against the likes of Erling Haaland, but he's not been there, and we all knew, at least people who watched the ball knew that he isn't there at the Erling Haaland level. But what do you reckon about his performance in the recent game? Liverpool versus Wolves. He did finally end up on the score sheet, brought them that lead, which brought Liverpool. I mean, equalized the goal rather after Gonzalo Guedes scored the 26 minute goal, and then Darwin Nunes at the 45th minute. But even then, they ended up 2-2, and then now they'll have to replay that round at the Wolves Stadium. Now, what is really going wrong with Liverpool? Is it that eight season curse that people are talking about when it comes to Klopp, or is it just they've played too many games in the last season? They played almost every possible game. They played in all four competitions, went very deep. A little unfortunate, you would say, that they couldn't come out with more than what they won. But is that kind of the tiredness? That there are some injuries as well, because otherwise you wouldn't expect Darwin Nunes to be the starter for this team, right? You would have hoped, or you would have expected this team to Darwin Nunes in this team, if no one was injured or the injury list was not as long, that Darwin Nunes would be like a player who would be coming off the bench to make an impact and not really be a starter. Also, Cody Gakpo's just made his debut. So, what do you reckon of these two players right now in the system?
I mean, for me personally, at least, I feel Liverpool are facing with a lot of issues regarding their squad depth. That's the bottom line of things. We did speak about how important it is to have squad depth, and for me, I think Liverpool are really lacking it at this very stage. I don't really see them really making it to the top four as well. That's a bold prediction to make, but the fact of the matter is that I know they've got plethora of talent in their squad, but at this point they look like they don't have a midfield at all. Henderson, or let it be even like so Fabinho, they all are looking very weary, very tired. I think they are unable to keep that intensity of a Liverpool Jurgen press, which which the Liverpool team was known for in the last 3-4 seasons. I personally think that is a huge issue when it comes to the Liverpool team, and I think also if you have to pinpoint on certain issues, it is the injury as well. You are looking at their top three forwards who are injured who are injured and unable to make it. But when you talk about midfield, they do not have depth in the squad. They really need to look at a midfielder at this point of stage. They really have to reinforce the midfield. I'm looking at a complete revamp in the midfield. Henderson is looking at the
I
latter
mean,
half
very
of his career.
surprised at all that they went for the likes of Cody Gakpo rather than a midfielder, maybe someone like, I don't know, Enzo Fernandez, something like that.
I mean, I'm not surprised. It's also because even in their front line, they do not have anybody at this point. They have to get in reinforcements. Now we do not know when Luis Diaz is going to be back. Luis Diaz is subjected to be back by February, March. Similarly with Diogo Jota and Bobby Firmino as well. So there are a lot of question marks when it comes to Liverpool front line, and midfield players were fit and they had to take the gamble because they thought, and they still think that these players can actually carry on for the rest of the season. But when it comes to the forward line, they knew that they're just one injury away from absolutely crumbling. And I personally think at this point they're just one Thiago injury from really making a mess of their complete season, because Thiago has been that one player who's been really saving their faces every game that Liverpool team has played this season. Let it be when it comes to his ball recovery. Let it be when it comes to his attacking progression, putting the ball in the final third. He has done every possible thing in the midfield to actually make sure this building does not crumble. And time again from the Liverpool team, what we are seeing is that this team has been not looking a piece of what they were the last 3-4 seasons. And it's also to do with the kind of intensity this bunch of players are unable to keep up with. Let's be with when it comes to Henderson, when it comes to someone like for example, Fabinho. Fabinho has had a very, very poor season. Keita has had a very awful season as well. He has not looked depart at all. So these factors are certainly looming over Liverpool, and these factors needs to be addressed rather quickly. And I'm pretty sure they want it. I'm pretty sure they will try to go for Bellingham, and it's up to Bellingham. If Liverpool aren't playing in the Champions League, I don't see Bellingham going to Liverpool at all. And there are going to be other teams. For example, Real Madrid really wants Bellingham to be part of their squad. So Bellingham is a very, very important asset, a um, very marketable asset at this point of stage in the transfer market, and and he's a commodity which will be in high demand. And I don't think it's going to be easy for Liverpool to acquire him, considering their position, considering their financial situation, considering how
Yeah.
they are trying to spend on other players as well. So it's going to be it's going to be very tough for Liverpool at this point of time to get the acquisition of someone like a Jude Bellingham into their squad. But they really need a complete reinforcement in the midfield. And now Van Dijk's injury, I read some of the reports, and it suggests that Van Dijk might be out for the entire season. And that's massive, massive hit on the Liverpool squad as well. And remember,
Yeah.
if you look at the right wing and right back positions, they do not have any backup. If Trent is injured, they do not have anybody else. If Salah is injured, that's it. This team has nobody to come off the bench and really make an impact. Hence, you're seeing all the reasons why this team has been struggling through the course of the season. And as we said, when Liverpool is completely fit and fine, they are a very different team. But the moment players start getting injured, like they had in 2021-22 season, no, 2020-2021 season, where things weren't really going at their as they wanted. They qualified for top four on the last day with Alisson's goal, and these things did happen as well. Um, so that's how Liverpool can look. They can look extremely bleak on days where their team is not turning up, and they do not look like a cohesive unit they were last season. As you mentioned, they were competing for all four trophies last season until the last year of the league. But unfortunately for them, since the last season, a lot has changed.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. By the way, I mean, just an update from the FA Cup as things are progressing right now. It seems that, Aston Villa are knocked out, able,
Yeah,
surprisingly enough, and they're knocked out by Stevenage, which is a club which does not play at the same level that Aston Villa does, for sure. Surprising turn of events early there, but I think that is full time as well. So which means there isn't a comeback coming up. Is it a full time yet? Yeah, it is full
yeah,
time. So Jamie Reed and Dean Campbell, who scored a last minute winner after an 85th minute red card to Leander Dion Decker from Aston Villa. So that's how things stand. And as of now, a full time has also been called on the FA Cup round. In the third round itself, Chelsea is knocked out by Man City after a brace by Riyad Mahrez. So that is pretty much from the FA Cup as well. Abel, any other stories
I
from
don't
the
think
FA
it's a
Cup?
bad thing for Chelsea.
Yeah, I agree with you because the kind of fixture congestion that they were facing, the injury list, it'll become a lot easier on their players and they can really
Yeah,
focus on
it
that
is. It is not a
Europe
bad
squad
thing.
right
In
now.
my opinion, it wouldn't be a bad thing even if Liverpool gets out to Wolves in the next leg when they go to Molineux after 10 days. It's not a bad thing because if you look at
Hmm.
Liverpool's fixtures, they're going to play Brighton next, and they have to play Chelsea, and between that they have to play Wolves. So it wouldn't be a bad thing to actually field your academy players and see where the game goes. It does not matter if you
Yeah,
let go of
absolutely.
this trophy and not qualify for the Champions League at all. This trophy does not mean anything ultimately. I think your
Yeah, I
focus should
think
be to
at this
qualify to
point in
the
time,
top four.
because they're struggling even to make it to Europa League, I think that should be their hopes. For I think I agree with you. Like, and even if they don't end up anywhere else, but at least being in Europe from a financial standpoint, it will be good for the club to at least end up in a Europa League spot. But let's shift our focus then to Spain. We are going to be having a great match. I think just a few hours from now, able. If I'm not wrong, just 92 minutes from now on, we're going to have Atletico Madrid take on Barcelona. But before we get to that match, we have to talk about the last fixture that just got over for Real Madrid, which was Real Madrid versus Villarreal. And in a crucial match, because remember, Real Madrid are equal right now. As of now, as it stands, they are equal to Barcelona. They would have hoped to get 3 points, pull ahead in the at least leading up to Barcelona 16th match. But they've lost to Villarreal 2-1. How much will that hurt them? Because this could have been the moment for them to take the lead. Because Atletico Madrid is not going to be easy, even though they don't have the best of seasons. when it comes to Barcelona, and Barcelona would be much happier that Villarreal has helped them out in this scenario.
and done by Barcelona's former manager as well, Kike Setien. So they'll be pretty pleased with that. But the fact of the matter is that Real Madrid were dominated on all fronts by Villarreal yesterday. To be very honest, the kind of press which was deployed by Villarreal, they went in with a system like a 4-1-4-1 kind of a formation, and they really did turn up. Someone like a Gerard Moreno, the kind of impact he had
Yeah.
dropping deep, or the kind of game he had yesterday against Real Madrid, he was top notch, and they did a very good job by keeping someone like a Vinicius Junior very quiet. I thought Vinicius Junior was completely pocketed by Juan Foyth throughout the course of the match, and you saw that. And all of a sudden, you saw the impact from the left hand side completely was reduced, and Ferland Mendy, he had a horrendous game. He did not overlap at all. It did not really help. The way in which he was trying to overlap and Vinny was trying to cut in, it did not really work in their favor. Similarly, on the right hand side as well, I don't really see this working in the long term where Valverde is going to play on the right. You should play Rodrigo on the right. I really don't see that happening. I personally think it works when it comes to makeshift opportunities, when it comes to days where you really have to play Valverde on the right, but all else Valverde should be slotted in the middle. I don't really see any other reason why Valverde should be going on the right. I know Valverde does everything for you playing on the right. He makes a run his off the ball abilities are great. He'll come back to recover the ball for you. He can go interiors as well. He can overlap. He can do a lot of things for you. But the fact is that when he plays in the right, it does not give you now that kind of a belief that there's something which is going to come from the right hand side. Rather, you play someone like a Rodrigo, who whenever he steps into the game, so when he steps in, he makes an impact straight away, and he deserves a starting position in this Real Madrid team. And I really think it's about time you start playing someone like a Rodrigo on the right. Maybe then you can shift someone like Valverde in the middle, because with Modric as well, you can't play him every game. You're trying to tire him out. I know he plays like a machine, but the fact is that you have to bring in someone you have to bring some fresh legs every now and then. I think Valverde through the middle is a very good option, and he can do a fair enough job. His creative gameplay is top notch. His defensive work rate is very good, and he can do a far decent job as well. So I don't see any reason why Valverde shouldn't be starting in the middle, and that's the way Real Madrid should be going. But from yesterday's game, um, there were it really did look like a game where Villarreal did dominate. Real Madrid did have few chances, but ultimately it was Villarreal who completely decimated them. They had it. They completely have the game in their pocket. The moment they got the lead, they made sure that they completely shut down all the doors for Real Madrid. And the way in which they pressed a midfield which had Toni Kroos and Modric was very, very commendable. And I really have to give it to them. Parejo did a very, very decent job. And I really like the way in which they did it. And I really hope going ahead as well, Villarreal continues this. They have the potential to do it. You have seen it with Villarreal in the last season in Champions League as well. How deep they can take tournaments, how deep they can go in big situations. So that's what I personally think of Villarreal team. But then it really helps Barcelona. Now La Liga has certainly opened up. La Liga is a very tight race, and today's game is going to be even more important for both the teams, not just for Barcelona, also for Atletico Madrid as well. It's not going to be easy for Barcelona. They had a very poor show, even in that Copa del Rey. It could have gone anyway. The team Intercity, not a lot of people even have heard of it. They took Barcelona to the extra time, and
I
by
mean, you
some
have
luck,
to give credit to Puig, right? He scored a hat trick, pushed Barcelona to the brink of it, but then they did come on top. And I think sometimes these are the kind of games that helps your squad overall. It pushes
it
you to
is,
that
but
extreme,
it
you would
is,
say.
but there's also now kind of a wave which is going on that Xavi should be out of the team as well. So that is among the Barcelona fans, that they're not having that kind of belief from Xavi that whatever he has promised is not delivered at all. And I personally think you can't blame Xavi at the same time. He has gotten everything what he wanted this season, and he's got a very good squad. When you compare this squad with many other squads in Europe, you can say this team should be playing. This squad should ideally be playing around a 16 in the Champions League. They got knocked out of the Champions League. Fair enough. Fans did accept it. Last week against Espanyol, you had a horror show. I know
Yeah.
there were so Matthias Lehos had another field day when it comes to refereeing decisions. Gave close to 14 cards that match, two red cards. But the fact of the matter is that you let Espanyol play the way they did at your own home, which is just not acceptable. You should not be dropping points like this when 3 points are up for grabs when it's especially in your home. That's something which was really disappointing from Barcelona. Now Lewandowski is out for what, 3 games. You really have to fit in someone like a Memphis Depay and or even maybe Ferran Torres. Ferran Torres has not really looked impressive at all through the course of the season. And now going in a pivot system with Frenkie de Jong as your sole pivot is a very good move. It's a welcoming move rather. And also Barcelona looking at someone like a Ruben Neves and they're trying to include Frankie Kessie in that deal, which I think is a very good deal. If we are getting someone like a Ruben Neves, I personally think he can play a pivot. He can play as a number 8 in your team as well. He can also advance up front. But it's not going to solve a lot of problems. Barcelona are still facing problems when it comes to them finishing, and especially in the final third, their creative gameplay has looked very, very, very awful at this stage, and they've been trying to slow the game a lot more. They've been having complete control of the game, but the fact is that that control is not leading them to anywhere. There is no final breakthrough out of it, and that's what I totally believe. When you're trying to put in a lot of mind into the philosophy that you have to hold the ball, you have to pass it around, but what is it leading into? You're not getting that final result which you really have to get, and that's been very disappointing from Barcelona through the season.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. We will. How do you see today's match progressing then? Atletico Madrid aren't really having a very good season, you would say, because they are in the fifth spot. You expect them to be at least in the third spot in terms of La Liga standings. But today they have an option to get into that final four. I mean, into the top four spot. Real Betis right now with 16 matches played, that's one more than Atletico Madrid, are 1 point ahead of them. So if you get 3 points today, or even if they get a point out of this day, out of today's match in terms of goal difference, they will go ahead. But how do you reckon this Simeone's squad is going to come up against Barcelona? I mean, do you reckon they have a chance?
They do have a chance. I mean, watching Barcelona play over the last couple of weeks, I personally think that Barcelona are not very confident at this time, and they really need some wins under the back. I think for Barcelona to lift off, they'll need a big win, like what they had last season. It started off with the Atletico game, if I remember. I think it was a 4-0 win or a 4-1 win, where Dani Alves scored, Jordi Alba scored, and they had a very good game. That's where things really started turning under Xavi, and where they started aspiring for that top 4 position, where they understood that they could even go deep in Europa League. So they'll really need a game like this, and they'll also be extremely confident with the fact that they're top of the table. And with Real Madrid losing out on that important game against Villarreal, it certainly benefits Barcelona. It really gives them that bit of an edge, but it is not done yet. It's certainly not done yet. It's not going to be easy for them to go to Wanda Metropolitan and actually win a game, because it's going to be really tough. But because Atletico Madrid, you know what you can expect from Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid at the end of the day. You really get only one thing from them, which is to really play solid football, which is to stay from the back, then hit on the counters. But the fact is that Barcelona, that's why Barcelona also have really lacked. They've been unable to break those low block teams. They've been really unable to break those walls where teams have been under kept a low block, kept compactness against Barcelona. So I think it's going to be a challenge against Barcelona, but I really want to see a lot more fluidity from Barcelona, especially through the creative midfield. I don't know what's happened to Pedri. Pedri has certainly slowed the game a lot more in the last 2 games. And Ansu Fati as well. I know he scored in the last match. I hope that gives him a lot more confidence. I really hope he starts today as a centre forward. For in my opinion, when Lewandowski is not playing, it should be Ansu Fati who should be starting as centre forward. And I really have a lot of hopes on him.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, Abel. Then I suppose that's pretty much it from our end. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We will be back next week. Definitely cover a lot more things because things are heating up in all top five leagues across Europe, and many stories are coming out. Especially because next week onwards, things will really start heating up in terms of the January transfer window as well. Many clubs looking for reinforcements. Many clubs looking to turn their seasons around, but. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Abel. And before we leave you with the fact that you can play risk-free fantasy, whether it be football, cricket, or basketball, or any other sport for that matter. And we cover. You can download it on Google Play Store and Apple App Store. It has not any kind of financial risk involved because you are not investing money. Really, you are investing virtual coins. Although what you will end up doing if you do well is end up getting rewards, some exciting rewards on the app. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll be back soon because sport never ends.
Yeah, we'll be back very soon with ILT20 and SA20 as well.
Yeah.
Because as you all know, we are a UAE based company, so ILT20 is our own league. So we'll be covering that extensively alongside SA20 as well. Now India's ODI series is there. Pakistan are playing New Zealand in ODI series. So we'll try to cover all of these things through the course of this journey, and of course, we'll keep you entertained. Bye bye.
Bye, guys.